You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
What's the worst that can happen? Ooh, 188.
Hey guys, welcome to On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. That crazy Jeep podcast with two guys chatting about Jeeps and Jeep life and Jeep issues and Jeep yeses and Jeep nos.
Jeepisms.
And we got, they're out of business. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
But, great place though.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I'm Kevin, the engineer. To use my usual line, the guy who reads instructions, uses the right tools, and generally follows those instructions unless I've got a wild hair, and off on a tangent on my own, which we'll play in later this podcast. And across from me, snorting into the microphone.
And I am Scott. I'm the slapstick parts guy. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. He derailed me with that one, guys. So while we will share what worked for us as well, what doesn't, remember, it's always up to you to try and remember how to speak and do what you want to your Jeep. But when you do that, like you said about reading instructions and following them and all that junk. Hi, everyone. Welcome to show 188.
188. It's a little disjointed at the moment. We've had an interesting morning this morning getting ready for the show.
When I said boot 188, that was for me to know to record this is 188 because we have 3 files on this memory card. And you went right into it and went, well, bleep. I guess we're getting right into this, aren't we?
Well, you did say, let's just roll with this.
You're not wrong with that.
And we're rolling after rolling all day around and hitting a couple of shops and friends and, well, not physically, but, metaphorically, and visiting with them and getting some information, sharing some information, and generally, just being insane people. Kind of goes with owning a Jeep.
And eating some Taco Bell, too. So if you hear any slight rumbling or noises, it's all Kevin. So with that,
no, I'm not the one who had the red packets buried in his food.
The red packets of hot sauce. Something's got to flavor it up.
Or the black packages. Did you see the Diablo?
I'm not a big fan of the Diablo sauce. I know everyone went, Scott doesn't like the hottest sauce. That stuff's like, it's just like drinking tire shine. I just really can't get into it.
So it doesn't taste good.
It doesn't
like
taste
taste
good
has anything to do with you and heat.
Moving on. So back to the Jeep podcast.
Yeah. Jeep. All-wheel drive vehicle. Goes anywhere you want. Comes to stock with friends. But generally will empty your pocketbook every chance it can.
And with that, teaser for the show later. No, my clutch is still not installed, or the bearing.
And we were talking about that today.
We're talking about that, but we do have an update from the guy who does not wait a year, does all the maintenance in one day.
No,
not really.
3 days.
So some people put the maintenance off.
Yeah.
And it usually ends up costing you.
Yeah.
But some people do the maintenance all in 1 week.
Well, when you're getting ready to use your Jeep and abuse your Jeep on a train ride followed by a multi-state loop drive over 10 days, it might just make sense to check out a few maintenance items. Just
we'll get to that later.
Sure you get there.
But it is the classic, I just need to do this one thing. Mm-hmm. 9 things later.
That's all I've told you about so far.
Oh, no. So with that, Kevin and I were actually having a really cool conversation before we left. This is going to be Tales from the Bondo Boutique.
Yes.
And
better known as the Body Shop.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about the one with the curvy species. I'm talking about the one with the steel and the plastic bumpers and the.
It's funny you said plastic bumpers.
Yes.
So one of our friends right now is actually living this in one aspect. Hopefully soon to follow with more updates about that. Mm-hmm. But it's this is very interesting. We have a Gladiator there.
At your shop, yeah.
And I have to be very careful because, the customer, privacy and all that. But they got into
only one person in the whole world has a Gladiator.
Yes. They got into a small fender bender.
Yep.
And they had a
surprise.
Yeah, a big heavy steel bumper made in China, and the airbag deployed.
Yep.
And it was apparently a low-speed accident. Everyone's like,
As in, it did not even move a frame horn. It didn't bend a sheet metal. It just, the bumper kind of did its little crumple. And
because I work for a place with the flapping penguin, basically everyone says, see, these Gladiators are a piece of junk. The airbag went off, not like that Toyota TRD over there. Tuck home. And I said, the one that comes factory with drum brakes for a 2023 model?
Yes. And
moving on.
Yes. Well, and also is notorious for frame rust.
Yes. And also is using the same engine from the 90s. But moving on. The point is that they will never be a sponsor probably now after this, but that's okay.
No.
But the problem interesting question that, again, in the collision business, I get asked all the time, hey, why didn't my airbags deploy? I was doing 40 miles an hour. These are generation 2 airbags. If you hit into the fleshy bits of the car, like above or below that front end reinforcement, the crumple zones work. And Kevin went into this long, really important, smart talk about like gravitational forces on the moon or something. And I honestly, guys, I got a little glossy-eyed because he went way above my parts knowledge. But the point is, that I asked the question, and we had a really good long talk, and I thought, halfway through, this might be something we should be thinking about because we always take those Tupperware bumpers off.
Yeah, so let's go straight into it here.
Yeah.
The issue is, what happens when I take off the factory,
Tupperware bumper.
Fine, call it a Tupperware bumper. The plastic skin, aluminum underneath, the styrofoams, the air pockets, the picket. And then I put on that massive piece of steel, but now, like this gentleman found out, a low speed. I mean, low speed. It may have been walking speed. Boof. Yeah. And his airbags go off. And how can that be? If it doesn't even damage the bumper other than a scratch, how can your airbags go off?
Yeah.
Well, it has to do with a small little technical thing. How is an airbag triggered?
Right.
All right. In the initial years of airbags, there was actually impact sensors located in the bumpers.
Mm-hmm. You should be the big yellow connectors on them.
Correct. And they were little pendulums inside a steel can that were fastened with a breakaway fastening on one side, and a jolt of sufficient magnitude, supposedly calibrated, would cause the little pendulum to break free and swing forward up against the contact teeth of the receiver, causing a grounding event, which was what would trigger the explosive charge to open the airbag. So it took so many ounces of force against the bumper to make it happen. That was why it was so much of an issue. Oh, my goodness, disconnect the batteries before you take the bumpers off. Disconnect the batteries before you pull the airbags out. Because the trigger event was a grounding, because obviously if something broke during the accident, you still want the airbags to go off, okay?
Yeah.
So they were triggered through a grounding event. So they were actually fully powered at all times. So you always wanted to disconnect the battery. You always wanted to then make sure the system had, 8 to 10 to 20 minutes to decharge any capacitors, to then disconnect the airbag before you started messing with anything that might have the trigger event, the potential to ground that wire so that you wouldn't get the bang and go, can you order a new steering wheel cover and an airbag assembly?
To the tune of $800.
All right. So, but what triggers them now? Same thing working in your iPhone. Probably a little heavier duty than that, but it's called an accelerometer. There is a issue with acceleration. It has an inverse. Everybody knows about acceleration. Well, there's acceleration, and then there's rate of acceleration.
Right.
If you've ever heard of the gravity, 32 feet per second, the double seconds tells you that 32 feet per second is an acceleration, but it's a moment. But over time per second, how much did that change? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In other words, it's like you're going down a track. You can accelerate at a speed, but that's a straight line curve. If you have a time over distance that's a curvature that gets steeper as time goes along, that's increasing acceleration. Scott came up with something. He says, oh, you mean like when you fall, you reach terminal velocity? I said, exactly. You've accelerated to the point that the air pressure pushing against you equals the weight of gravity pulling you down. That's why you reach a terminal velocity. Now, if you don't have a parachute, that terminal velocity is high enough, you're dead. But, beyond, I love it when he looks at the floor.
Poor guy couldn't swim or fly.
Yeah. So what's that got to do with an airbag? I remember that was Scott's comment.
Yeah.
And it's very simple. Is the accelerometer measures that rate of change. It's a very, very sensitive measurement of rate of change. So you slamming on the brakes won't set it on because the brakes can decelerate, which is simply acceleration in negative. Okay. Yeah. Same thing as up as versus down, it can measure very accurately that rate of acceleration or deceleration in this case. And when that rate of decrease exceeds a threshold. Not the actual deceleration itself, but the change in deceleration passes a certain threshold. Then it triggers the airbags. So what does that have to do with my bumpers? Well, you have a single accelerometer in most Jeeps since about 1997, when the introduction of the TJ.
Okay.
I'm not sure about the YJs, whether they used an accelerator or the bumper switch.
I don't think they even had airbags.
Well, that could be too. But so, we have, if you've ever played with your TJs, I'm going to go to those guys at TJs, you know that right in front of your shifter, right there at the end of the firewall / trans tunnel, there's a little silver box with cooling fins on it and a big fat plug that plugs into the top of it. And everybody's like, ooh, be careful. That's your airbag trigger. Yeah, it's basically the accelerometer or decelerometer measuring device right there in the middle of your Jeep, where it will read an impact from any angle, any side, any 3/4 corner hit, whatever. And once the change in deceleration happens, not just deceleration, because you can slam on lockup brakes, but if that rate of change is violent enough, it will trigger the airbags. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff, and there are more techie computer people that can explain that to you far better than I can. I just know that it measures the rate of change of deceleration, not just the deceleration. And here's the thing. That, what do you call it? Tupperware bumper.
Yeah.
Is Tupperware for a reason. It has a energy absorbing function that slows the rate of change.
Yeah.
It decelerates you very quickly, yes, in yours, in my opinion, but in terms of a computer, it's a much gentler braking force than a steel bumper that has no cushioning and just stops abruptly against whatever you hit.
Right.
So therefore, you may have, let's just pick a number. This is an arbitrary number, folks. Please don't hold it to me as a data point. It's not. It's just an arbitrary discussion point. Let's say you're in a 5 mile an hour crash. Your foot's off the brake, you're chatting, you're naughty, looking at your iPhone, I don't care, and you bump the guy in front of you. Now, he has an energy-absorbing bumper. You have an energy-absorbing bumper. They're both rated to a minimum of 2.5 miles an hour. That's going to give you 5. You probably won't set your airbag off.
Right.
You do the same roll with a steel bumper into that truck diversion post embedded in the concrete in front of you. Mm-hmm. Same inertia. You need to decelerate in the same distance to 0, okay? But your speed of deceleration, because it's an abrupt stop, is much higher. It might be 2, 3, 4 times as much as the energy-absorbing bumper. And your airbag will deploy. Because the sensor does not know that you've modified the front end, nor does it care.
Yeah.
Because it's set to trigger the airbag at the point at which your human soft tissue, what'd you call it when the seatbelt runs across?
A life stripe.
A life stripe. It's set somewhere around the life stripe area.
Yeah.
And so this is something that you have to be aware of when you modify factory components. People are, they're just plastic because it's cheap. I can't argue with that.
Yeah, no.
I cannot argue with that. But they're also designed as an energy-absorbing system. And they've gotten smart about absorbing it through progressive and timed demolition and destruction. That's why you look at some of these bumper systems that, okay, we have a plastic outer skin, we have a plastic inner skin, we have a waffle pattern underneath that, we have an aluminum structural brace under that, we have these other plastic pieces. Those are all designed, A, to support, and B, to slowly dissipating energy.
Right.
And if it's dissipated in the form of fractured plastic, smushed foam, bent aluminum, it doesn't get through the frame rails to you.
Yeah.
All right. And if it doesn't get to you, it doesn't get to the decelerometer.
Well, that's one of the things. If you ever watch rally racing, the way the spectacular crashes where the car hit the berms and fly into the air and tumble and land and tumble 5 or 6 more times. And the guys walk out and they go, they kind of dust themselves off because the energy dissipated over a certain amount of time.
Right.
The ones that you really have to worry about is when these rally races round the corner and smack right into a tree and don't move.
Yeah. You've absorbed the entire amount of the kinetic energy of the moving vehicle. You decelerated it over an instant in time.
Yeah.
And the deceleration forces, unfortunately, to get rather gruesome without being too graphic, the human body is relatively soft and the parts do not all decelerate in unison.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you have a sudden abrupt stop, parts of you keep going while parts of you don't. And that difference can get strong enough to separate parts.
Yeah. The
internally,
inner
externally,
bits.
you can really be hurt. So when you make these changes, you should be aware of that.
Yeah.
You think you're adding invulnerability. You're not. Okay, you're actually increasing your traffic vulnerability. Off-road, the velocities we are generally traveling are slow enough that the steel bumper helps us. We don't peel it off. We can scrape it across the ground because you're not going far enough to have a deceleration event that hard.
Right.
On the other hand, if you look at some of these guys, there's a classic video from about 10 years ago where when the first Lightning came out and somebody took it off a bump and jumped it.
Yeah.
The Raptor. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Not the Lightning, the Raptor. And he landed. He didn't even hit the nose. He landed vertically hard enough. That deceleration of landing triggered his airbags.
Yeah.
As well as broke the frame, as well as put him in the hospital, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that's just a short tidbit. I'm not going to tell you that there's a fix because there isn't. That's there to protect your life. Okay. You're modifying an energy absorbing system. I'm not trying to tell you shouldn't. I modified mine, but I know what risk I took when I did that.
Yeah.
I'm not, when you do a heavy bumper with a winch, with some kind of a stinger or a bull bar, you're not increasing your survivability. This is a very counterintuitive thought. You are not increasing your survivability. In very specific cases, if your impact item is a very soft item, yeah, it'll blow it out of the way. But in most cases, if you run into another vehicle, you will actually activate your airbags earlier. And it's not it's even a bad thing to say. It's not earlier. You will trigger the event that would injure you earlier. And so it's compensating for your changes. It's coming on when the force in the cab is approaching a life hazard. Does that make sense, Scott?
That makes sense. But one other thing, before our inbox is flooded with, I did was this and this happened. And guys, there are so many variables in accidents.
Yeah.
It's not even, it's hard to quantify.
Yeah. You're going to find people that say, we had an accident and we ran in with our Jeep and the airbags didn't deploy. Yeah. Okay. Remember what I said about soft impact?
Most Jeeps are lifted. So that means you smashed into the soft bits of the car.
Right. You may have gone into the trunk and the taillights.
Yeah.
There are extremes and there are exceptions to every rule. I'm trying to help you understand why some things happen on a modified Jeep that you just don't understand because you believe you've strengthened it, okay? And you have from a physical sense, but not from a performance sense. You have actually decreased the crumple zone.
Yeah.
Sometimes to zero. Like in my case, I'll be honest with you, I have no crumple zone other than the front end of the Jeep, which means I will set off an airbag should I, get into an accident. My point, how do I adjust for that? I increased it my following distance. I don't know if you know that. I am an aggressive driver, folks. I'll be the first one to tell you that. I do not tailgate. I absolutely will not tailgate. I will slow down if somebody gets in between me and makes a tighter gap. I will back it down and piss off people behind me because I know if I hit someone, not only going to hurt them, I'm going to set off my airbag.
Yeah.
Okay. And then technically with any front end damage and my airbag deployed, Scott will tell you what that means.
It's totaled.
Pretty much.
The other thing to keep in mind, like when I did the bumper on the Gladiator, I went with an OEM bumper, the winch mounted bumper, and that's got two big plastic pockets.
But see, that was designed to provide at least a similar deceleration quotient for a vehicle in a crash.
Yeah.
And guys, these are all, please understand, these are all low speed events.
Yeah.
Once you get up above 10 miles an hour, forget it. It's going to go off the airbag because I don't care what you got up there. You're going to trigger the sensor.
Well, one of the things, when I first got the TJ, everyone kept, or the LJ, you got to pull the fuse so your airbag doesn't go off while you're wheeling and all that. Because there is a video circling out there where a Jeep, and he comes down on a rock real hard and his airbag goes off.
Well, guess what? That was necessary because he decelerated that fast that the airbag went off. And had he not had an airbag, he probably would have head-butted the steering wheel and probably had injuries, possibly traumatic.
Right.
The calibration for the deceleration sensor in the middle of the Jeep is calibrated for human safety, not for vehicle protection. It's not really caring whether the front of the Jeep gets totaled or not totaled. It's trying to keep you, the driver, and your passengers intact and survivable. That's the only thing you need to understand. It's not... I think those centrally located decelerometers are awesome because they don't care about modifications. They don't care about it. All they know is, are you decelerating at an increasing rate beyond what's safe for human? And if that is, bang, you have a cushion.
And again, if you're out there with a rock buggy and all this is inconsequential to you,
then take the accelerometer out.
Yes.
And your airbags probably shouldn't be in a rock buggy. Although when you see them bounce down the rocks upside down, probably wouldn't stay inflated long enough for some of those long mountain.
1 hour later, as you're going down the hill, fast way. But these are just some things to think about. General rules of thumb.
They really are here. And I'm just trying to help you to understand why your Jeep came with that box and what the risks are when you monkey with it. Am I telling you not to monkey with it? No, not really. I'm telling you that just be aware that you're changing parameters. The same thing happens when we add weight to our Jeeps. And our originally 3,000-pound TJ becomes a 4,500-pound or 6,000-pound beast. I'm sorry, the deceleration is going to happen faster, and you're going to be more likely, okay? On the other hand, if you make it too light, same thing happens. Deceleration calculations are based upon the mass of the vehicle and rate of deceleration over time. And that's really what they're measuring, is not just how fast you're decelerating, but how fast the decay is. In other words, am I decelerating harder and harder? It's like braking easily and getting closer, and I'm not going to make it. And you start getting down to the point where both feet are on the pedal stomping. That's a rate of change over time.
Right.
As opposed to a simple rate of deceleration that I'm losing 5 miles an hour every 100 feet. Now I'm losing 500, I'm losing 5 miles an hour, then I'm losing 10 miles an hour for 10 feet, then I'm losing 15 miles an hour for 15 feet. That's a rate of change. Yeah. And that's what the decelerometer pretty much measures. It really is measuring G-forces forward, but that's essentially what you're trying to do.
Well, on top of all of this, again,
deeply techie.
Deeply techie. But again, it's your Jeep. Do what you want and understand the risks. We're just telling you, there are things to think about. Like when we talk about shows with the gear oil and changing the pitch of the angle of the fill holes when you do the lift.
Yeah,
people don't think about these things. This person, I can tell you right now, did not think about that when they put this bumper on.
Right.
You can say, well, it was a cheap Amazon bumper. Well, it could be.
But that really didn't have a difference.
Yeah, the bumper metal itself. Okay, if the bumper deformed, it still probably would have happened because again, it's the impact.
But deformation takes energy. And that's energy that's not transferred into the cab in terms of an acceleration, increasing deceleration rate. So that's where the whole idea of crumple zone came from, Scott, does that mean you should go get the cheap sheet metal bumpers? No, because we expect them to do other things to keep us alive. Furthermore, the rate of deceleration does have a velocity portion. The airbags generally, you have to be going more than a certain speed for them to deploy.
Right.
All right. That's why you can't just bump a parked car and the airbags in the parked car go off.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite. So, my car got hit and the airbags went off. No,
they don't do that.
Don't do that. And that's when we also...
Now, the older ones used to do that. The very first generation ones could do that. But nowadays, you're not likely to get an airbag in a 2 mile an hour, 2.5 mile an hour, because the road testing and all the tests you see on the videos of the cars being dragged down the track into the dummy end, the whole 9 yards. When they show them at 2.5 miles an hour, they've determined that the 2.5 mile an hour bumper systems can absorb the energy safely. So don't deploy the airbag.
Right.
So these are all little pieces. That's why when you don't adjust your wheel speed sensor and your speedometer correctly after regearing, you can throw off the trigger points on your airbags.
Well, and another little sidebar, because I actually see this a lot with the JLs and Gladiators. Hey, check out my new carbon fiber dash overlay on the passenger side.
Really?
Guys, I'm going to say something.
Have you ever been hit in the face with a carbon fiber bat?
Or shrapnel? I mean, we're laughing, but it's actually not funny because we see people put like the bejeweled emblems on their
Stickering on the dash,
on their steering wheel. It's like, no, please don't do that, because that ends up shrapnel in your face. And I have experienced an airbag going off in my face, and I can tell you right now, it is not pleasant.
It's scary. It's shocking, and that's only being hit with a big pillow.
Yeah,
the bag, and it's a nylon bag full of air at high velocity. It's a punch.
With hot gases.
Yeah, it's a punch in the face. Start putting hard metallic or rock-like materials or sharp plastic on that bag. Believe it or not, your steering wheel cover and your dash cover, or wherever your airbag is on your vehicle, they are pre-scored and pre-strengthened so that they will not go with the bag. They will peel open like a Jiffy Pop, label. Yes. And lay back on either side, but they will not leave the steering wheel. They will not leave the dash. Mm-hmm. Only the bag moves forward along with a whole lot of talcum powder.
Yeah.
Or other high-pressure lubricant, believe it or not, so that the bag opens correctly. And believe it or not, bags are full of holes in them because the shock of the blast is enough to open them hard, to catch you and hold you. And then it immediately, as soon as the charge is done with the expansion, the gas is immediately leaked out so that you haven't even had time to go, oh, you know what, and go, what?
It's already deflated.
It's already deflated and you're breathing again.
Yeah. Except for where the holes are, like on the Charger, the hot gas went right into my forearms, and you got to get a little bit of a burn, but that's why they also call it the kiss of life.
Yeah. It's very much necessary. So again, we're not trying to change your viewpoint. We're trying to change your understanding.
Yeah.
You can change your bumpers. We all have done it, well, not all of us, but a lot of us have done it. But there is a downside to it. There's a good side, but there's a downside. And it's up to you to decide where your risk point is.
Oh, kind of like when we say up to you to decide what you want to do.
That's what you want to do. Someday someone might come up with a durable off-road bumper that would take the abuse, but also absorb the deceleration, so that maybe you would have a normal airbag deployment, not a sensitive. But that hasn't been made yet.
I got an idea, kind of like off my grandpappy's 83 Chevy Celebrity, because GM was popular for doing this. We take our leftover springs that we got from our lift and then weld them to the bumper so they go boing, you know.
Well,
what do you think?
Actually, the original absorber systems, remember when we had the big aluminum bumpers that stuck forward with the rubber snubbers on them in the 70s?
Yeah, I know.
That's what they were. They weren't coil springs inside. They were crushable aluminum, I don't know what you'd call it, really coarse steel wool made out of aluminum wool, in slipping tubes that would absorb a lot of energy as they crushed up. They'd crush, they'd get hot, they'd deform, and they worked. You had to replace the entire front of the car every single time.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, we talk about the Tupperware bumpers, but if you have a low-speed incident and the Tupperware bumpers perform, the bodyman goes, yeah, no problem. Here, you take the standard color skins. I'll take the trim piece that's painted. We'll unsnap everything. Is everything straight? Maybe bend a tab back. Give me the harness. Ping. I'm back in biz.
We do it all day long with fascias on cars.
And how many hours does that take?
We could literally have a car in at 8 and have it back out for QC by 2:30.
By 2:30.
As long as it's just a bumper skin.
Yeah, as long as it's just the bumper skin. But that also didn't take the airbag out, did it?
Nope.
But see, folks, there's where it really comes from. Yes, it's cheaper, but it's actually better. Mm-hmm. It is an easily repairable energy absorbing system until you pay the bill. And then you kind of go, I want a big old piece of plate steel out front. Well, then you find out, like our friend with the Gladiator, well, There's a trade-off.
Look, I'm already running down the street with a sheet of plywood. I don't need any more non-aerodynamic stuff.
Yeah, so that's just a short course based on the two of us having a BS session before the show.
Well, it's a crash course in bumper technology.
Yeah, it really is. And there's a toss out for everybody in the bumper industry out there, the aftermarket bumper industry. You know, you're building the bumpers typically specific to a vehicle. Mm-hmm. Be interesting to see what the marketability would be for a off-road capable bumper with similar energy absorbing characteristics.
Or a rubber baby bumper.
Yeah, good luck on that one.
Couldn't get it out.
Yeah.
I tried.
So anyhow, with that, the other thing, I'll throw one last curveball to this whole mix just to confuse everybody further. The other thing about the modern Tupperware bumper, as you call it, is the energy absorbing side to the outside impact person. If you hit a pedestrian, it will absorb energy, taking away from their potential damages. You know, if you run into a person, you're going to hurt them still.
Yeah.
Okay. And God forbid, please pay attention when you drive. Put the
phone down.
Thank you. We had that today with somebody. Yeah, you know, do not drive distracted.
Like I said, I had a lady with her hand on the steering wheel watching her YouTube as she was going down the left lane 20 miles
thinking she was looking over, you know, could look.
I'm going to play it smart. Look at me. I'm really driving. No, you're not. Put your phone down.
Put your phone down. The point is, you think you can and you can't. You have one job when you slide in the driver's seat. Drive. Mm-hmm. And it takes full awareness. It's been proven time and time again. But I'll get off my preachers. The whole point is on these Tupperware bumpers, they are also designed for a certain level of exterior protection.
Yeah.
So if you run into a pedestrian, they stand a chance of surviving. And of course, I hate to say it, should you run into a pedestrian with your big steel bumper and your Stinger, you're going to have a problem and their day is over, most likely. So again,
Pay attention.
Put
the phone
down. Drive
down.
carefully. Put the phone away. You can have a conversation as long as your eyes stay on the road. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, I'm
through
preaching.
Bluetooth.
I am very much preaching, and I apologize to our listeners, but it scares me sometimes because I do see my fellow Jeepers out there, people I know, driving crazy. You know, oh, let me take a side cut off a 90-degree road and run through the dirt. Do you know there's not a person there? You know?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing I like about driving a Jeep. You can't hear me on the phone anyways. I'll call you back.
That's a good point is, you know, well, mine, you know, you have an option on at least an iPhone.
Yeah.
If it moves faster than 25 miles an hour, it won't answer the phone. It won't even ring the phone. It'll just say, you know, I'm sorry, I'm driving right now. I'll call you back. Please leave a message.
I got CarPlay, and honestly, I just let it ring sometimes.
Yeah.
If you call me and it goes right to voicemail, I'm driving.
Yeah, same here.
Or I'm doing something else.
So anyway, we've kind of pounded that one to the point.
That one to death. So hey,
sorry. That's if you guys haven't figured it out, that tends to be one of our little needle spots.
Look, again, it's and this is just being real. We like having all of our listeners, so please stick around.
Yeah, that's
why you want to
lose any of you.
Put it on onthetrailpodcast.com. Listen to this podcast and then throw the autoplay next episode. Absolutely. And that way you don't have to worry about it. So with that, speaking of fixed things, Kevin, I think it's time we tippy tire on into your garage segment because man,
I don't want to go back there. I've been there for a week.
You have been a very busy man.
Folks, let's put this in the category of deferred maintenance, the ultimate cost.
Okay, in his defense, no, he has not been like me and hoarding parts and deciding to do this. This was literally one thing led to another.
Yeah. All right. First off.
Ooh, there's another one.
At the time of the release of this show, I should be, and I hope I'm up in Pennsylvania, Butler, Pennsylvania area with my lovely wife going to the Bantam Heritage Jeep Festival. Okay, it's my first time there, which is very strange because I grew up only I shouldn't say grew up. From college on, I lived only about an hour and a half away, and I was up in there many, many, many times at different parks and camping. And, And at that point, while I love Jeeps, I hadn't done my history. And so I didn't realize that I was that close to the birthplace of the Jeep. Well, things aligned this year. And Sue and I, as I've mentioned before, are getting on a train. And so is my Jeep.
They're leaving on a slow train, heading north of Pennsylvania again.
But I get to sleep the whole trip.
That's the best part.
And 2/3 of the distance will be gone in the morning. And they tell you time travel's not possible.
I woke up, it was 7 hours later.
Yeah. Not only that, but I was north of the Mason-Dixon line. In enemy territory.
Easy.
Can't say that, though. My wife's from Philly. I'm from the Carolinas. So, yeah, there's so many wrong things to say there.
Nope, not gonna.
But anyhow, knowing that then we had to go from Lorton, Virginia, up through Gettysburg to Mechanicsburg, a place we used to live. And from there, we're going on up to Penn State in Happy Valley, Pennsylvania. And then from there, we're going on over to Butler and the whole area around there where the event's being held. It's actually a little ways away. And then from there, we're going back down near Pittsburgh to a farm where I lived right before I got married. And then there, we're going down into the middle of Maryland and going to some old heritage hotels. Mm-hmm. And then finally back to Lorton to get on the train to reappear in Sanford, Florida the next day.
Literally down the street from me.
Literally down the street from Scott. So going, let's see. I needed to change the differential oil and do an oil change and filter and do a lube job. And, the radio's broken and the door seals are leaking and the top's squeaking. My flag's pretty well beat up on top of that. The brakes are acting up and being a little funny about this. So let me start with the brakes because that one scares me a little bit, Oh, look at that. I see brake fluid tracks under the master cylinder and down the booster.
Visa number.
Yeah. Starting off, decided that, booster's bad. Booster's bad? Master cylinder was bad. That could explain some of the problems with the knee. Let me take a look. The proportioning valve looks really... How many miles do I have on that? 150,000. Okay, yeah.
Not to say much, but that brake booster was back when Gettysburg had its address.
Yes, pretty much. So I get all those parts and I do the brake job. And then I'm like, well, I need to go ahead now because I'm putting new components in and let's do a complete flush of the system. Mm-hmm. So I buy 2 quarts of brake fluid, DOT3, which is what I require, and open the bleeder valves, put the pressure bleeder on the lines, and I bleed the whole thing out. And then over on the bench, I'm sitting there bench bleeding the master cylinder and getting it to stop foaming and breathing bubbles and that fun stuff. Long story short, get it all back together and get it all bled, and now I actually have brakes, except that, they don't really feel that different. And then my ears catch something over top of the engine idle. Mm-hmm. The brake booster hose, which is new, just isn't sealing very tight on the booster. So, let's see if we can figure out how to fix that. Get that fixed up. Now, all of a sudden, my heater system is working again.
And you have
my
AC.
Dampers are moving where they're supposed to be. So, hey, the idle smoothed out. Hey, look at that.
The dampers are dancing.
Yes, I don't have a vacuum leak anymore. I forgot. While I was in here looking at the heater stuff, my radio doesn't work very well. Its reception really, really stinks. And I look inside and get, somebody let the magic smoke out of my radio. Do you think getting rained on a couple of times with the top off might have had something to do with it? I don't. Let me order a radio.
What brand was that? Barbecue?
JVC.
Yeah.
So I've got had to put a new radio in. Scott looked at me and he says, what the hell? The cats attack your hands, the backs of my hands. I said, no, I was reaching in a Jeep dash from behind.
You could literally play tic-tac-toe with the scars.
And so that was one of those fun things. So there I am swapping out a radio. And of course, does my plug from my JVC go into the new Kenwood? No. But at least I had an adapter, so I unplugged it from the factory harness, and I don't cut my factory harness unless I absolutely have to. Went over to the bench, took the two adapters. I will tell you that Kenwood and JVC are from the same company, so at least the color codes were the same. The plugs weren't, but the colors were. So I make up a new adapter and get it all back together. So now I have a radio. Oh, gee, the Kenwood radio. Okay, the JVC antenna plugs in on the passenger side. The Kenwoods, it plugs in on the driver's side. Should be no problem, right?
Except you're 5 inches short.
Too short. But I did get a new cord. And
Meanwhile, behind the cussing and fussing.
So then I get to slide underneath and drain lubes and change them and change oils, change filters, get that done, do a lube job, got that done. And then Susan looks at me and goes, I'm getting tired of that little by my ears all the time. She said, I don't know if I can put up with 10 days of that. I'm like, I don't hear that. Okay, I'll go look.
Meanwhile, Kevin's holding a thing of earplugs behind his back. I have a fix for it, honey.
Yeah, not quite. First thing I do is I notice that, I kind of knew my door seals were shot. It's like I said, it's an 05 in Florida. Mm-hmm. Not like we have any heat issues down here that cause rubber to melt.
Nah.
And so,
meanwhile, on the surface of the sun,
I will tell folks that, there's a particular brand on Amazon that they sell door seals. I'm sure they came from where. Well, no, I'm not. The label was not in Chinese or anything like that. But they fit, and they fit perfect. Every clip, every hole fit awesome. So I changed that out, put it back together, and my goodness, I actually can hear the radio. I don't have all the whistling and the banging. Now, you do have to, shall we say, close the doors with authority. So that got done. And then I'm still hearing. Now, I put my hard top, my Freedom Top back on. And yes, my TJ has a Freedom Top, guys. It's there's one manufacturer that makes this if you custom order it. Yeah. And now her size doesn't squeak, and mine's going to town. And I don't have anything here that can make the squeaky noise, but just imagine it wasn't that. It's more like a blow up pool toy against a styrofoam ice chest.
Now that, sir, is quite a collection of sounds.
It was kind of a and it was really bad.
Kind of like the saw and the straw thing.
Yeah. And that's a great one. It sounds like the straw going through the plastic soda cap. But anyway, exactly. And so I start digging around, taking things apart. And lo and behold, I find out that the Florida sun has helped again. And the fiberglass Freedom Top has kind of warped a little bit so that the little ears that come down just at the back of the doors, where it has the little anchor bolts that hold it against the hard shell, has kind of curled in.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Just enough so that the welting on the edges, the vinyl welting of the hardtop and the vinyl welting of the removable panel,
wore through?
No, are rubbing on each other. And they're squeaking. So in my usual inventiveness, run over to the bin of, assorted junk, dig through till I find some leftover brown furniture feet pads that you stick on the bottom of chairs and stuff so they don't tear up your floor. And I had a 2-incher. And I look at the curvature of that ear and I'm going, that looks pretty close to 2 inches. Yeah, it is. Cut it in half. This curve fits this side. That curve fits that side. I put them on the actual Freedom Top, and now it didn't want to fit because they had curved in. But I just pushed down on it, and it kind of went like a Ziploc box. Book! And I was like, okay. Tighten everything back up, took it for a drive, dead silent.
Nice.
All right, so, okay. Squeaks are gone. Air noise is gone. Brakes work again. Let's see. What else did I... Oh, that's right. I need a place to put my phone on my dash, see prior discussion.
Yeah.
So that when I'm running a GPS function for mapping, I can look at it at eye level and never take my eyes off the road. I did find one on Amazon. It was about $30, but the challenge, folks, is today you go to buy a phone mount. They're made for modern cars,
With
which
4-inch
have
windshields.
with huge sloping windshields that you have a foot of dash from the edge of your bezel all the way to the bottom of the windshield. You know, it may be 18 inches deep. So they have long arms. And if I use one of those in the TJ, it's between us, and I have to turn my head to look at the phone.
And I was going to say your backseat passenger could help you with that.
Probably, except I don't have a back seat in there. But I found this one that goes really, really short, sticks really, really well, got 5-star rating. It was $29, which is a little steep, but Scott's seen it. It goes in, it holds the phone exactly above the area you'd want it to be held. It can easily turn sideways. So that's another one that was checked off the list.
A lot better than the one I stapled to my windshield.
So then we kept going with other, what would I call it, nitnoid annoyances and trail fixes. I have plans, and we're going to actually do a show on this. I saw some ideas, put them together, Scott knows, and came up with some better ways to take tools on a trail, trail bag contact. So we're going to do in the future an updated show on trail bags, including packing yourself a trail bag. And so we're gonna make some stuff. We may even do a little video snippet for folks out there. But I still have to pack my bags. I did discover that a military issue shipping footlocker. Now, not the big heavy ones, but the lighter black plastic ones. Those of you guys in the DD214 club or actives, thank you for your service, will know what I'm talking about. It's the one that when we were overseas in the sandbox, they were like, oh, well, you can get these at the commissary, PX, BX, whatever one you want, exchange, and put all your stuff in it and take it down to the postmaster and they'll ship it home for you. Yeah, one of those. They fit absolutely perfect, like they were made for them behind the seats in the TJs.
Nice.
I was incredibly surprised. So that gives me a little bit of storage and carrot on that thing. Now, so what else? Let's see. What else was there? There was, I had a whole session. Here's a little tech segment for you guys. I'm really running on here. Sorry. But my driver step, it failed again. And this time I can't really blame the motor. I mean, that's the side that has run consistently and repeatedly for the better part of 8 or 9 years.
More like 9, yeah.
9 years. And the motor finally gave up. The actual motor just went bleh. So I got another motor. Yay! They've changed the model. Boo. I had to take pieces of old, pieces of new to make a motor. Might work. It will work. It works, but I'm not sure how well sealed it is.
Franken-Motor 1.0. Stay tuned, kids.
But I put it all back together and immediately started a 2-week-long frustration of ping. Why did it pop the clip off? And it's hanging half open. It still runs, but the dog bone that goes from the motor to the actual lift arms, and I put it back together and I check the alignment. No, this is dead straight. That's ping.
Careful, folks. He's angry.
Put it back together again. Hey, I've got it going. Ping.
And that's, kid, when I thought I heard thunder all the way in 200 miles away in Deltona. Turns out it was a temper tantrum known as Tropical Storm Kevin.
Probably true. I was just, I'm going to tie a rope to the dang thing and tie it to the mirror so that when I get out, I untie it and it goes down. And when I close the door, it pulls it back up again.
In your defense, the string would come off and wrap around the rear tire and rip the whole side of the Jeep off. You know that, right?
Probably.
Okay.
Well, I learned something. What? Yeah, if I don't learn something every day, I'm disappointed, bud.
I know.
And I'd rather have 5 or 6 or 7 new experiences.
I'm not going to be able to say what all the time, so I decided to do it that time.
It turns out that I learned a apparently little known fact about E-clips. Now, those of you who know, they're also called Mickey Mouse clips because the inside silhouette looks like Disney's, character.
Well, that was a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse?
Neither.
Okay.
This is
or a total eclipse of the heart.
This is a C-clip.
Oh, okay.
It's the little spring steel piece that snaps in a groove on a round piece of stock to create a stop. All right. You can also have a circlip that's a circle with the 2 holes in it that everybody cusses about that you don't have the right pins and the right tool to take apart.
Yeah, we do. It's called vice grips.
No, you usually can't get those in the little tiny holes.
And a hammer.
Well, yeah. And so the steps are assembled with E-clips, and they're a very good clip, don't get me wrong, but they are only about 270 degrees. They're not 360 like a circlip. That's why it's called a circlip, circular clip. And they work very well, but they have 3 tabs that go into the slot. The center between it and the 2 ends go in. And if anything starts to push one of the ends out of the groove, it can then spiral itself out on the next load cycle, whatever puts pressure against it. Well, it turns out that yours truly screwed up. Unintentionally, but still screwed up. Each one of the little dog bone linkages, it's about a 2-inch long piece of steel with a little dent in it, like a little dog bone type thingy, and the ends are round with a hole in them, and they have bushings in them, little plastic, nylon, Teflon bushings. And the bushings aren't just a tube, they're a tube with a flange on top, like a hollow rivet kind of thing. You can push them in one side, but the other side doesn't go through, and you trim them to the thickness that you want. And usually you put a flat washer on the other side, a plastic washer. However, if you put it where the flat top is towards the drive motor, which helped me with my spacing for centering, the other end, which is the cutoff tube end sticking through, there's nothing you can cut to make it perfectly smooth.
Right.
It's still a cut surface. Even if you have a washer, it's still a cut surface. Apparently, that cut surface is enough to unhook an E-clip. So it would survive until that little sleeve turned enough times till whatever cut edge burr, and I looked, folks, and I sanded, and I heated, and I would catch it and lift the edge of the E-clip, just like you do with a screwdriver when you're trying to take them off. And then the next time the step went open and went to close, ping. Now, the good news is the shape of the step's such that it spit the E-clip inside. I found every single clip every single time inside the step, no matter how many miles I drove. Cold consolidation. And then I'm sitting there, literally in one of those moments that only somebody as an engineer who is being stumped can absolutely have,
Dude, these steps, I'm sorry, have been your Optimus Prime to your Megatron.
They have been but they've been great. They work great.
I know. They're your Sheriff Buford P. Justice to your Bandit.
Yeah. And but they've been my fault, not the design by the builder.
Okay.
All right. It's me not understanding the level of details. I fully expect that Kevin and the crew at Rock Slide Engineering probably went through 3 times this on their prototypes.
Right.
Okay. So that's the only thing that kept me going. All right. Is I have one over here that was giving me fits, and we put it back together, and it's working fine. And it's continued to work fine since we did that a year ago. Why is this side now screwing?
What am I missing?
What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
What the heck did... And I finally said, I'm laying down, and I opened the passenger side. I didn't want to take it out and disturb it. I just opened it, and I stuck my phone. I will say what's the neatest thing about a phone. It's skinny, and you can turn the camera on, and you can hold it up places you can't even get your fingers in and go click, 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 click. And I'm looking at it, and about the 3rd picture in, I said, no, it can't be that simple. I could see the bushing was in the other way. It was pointing with the flat surface out to the clip and the cut edge in to the crank motor. And I'm going, that's the only thing I can see. It can't be that simple. Really, it can't be that simple. Folks, it's that simple. It's been in now for a couple of weeks, and it works perfectly. It doesn't spit out clips. Now, having said that, in my travel bag is a Ziploc bag full of bushings, razor blade, washers, E-clips, C-clips,
egrets,
even a spare dog bone link.
Right.
Because it is easy enough to fix. I got down now that I can take the steps off the side of my TJ in about a minute and a half, and I'm not exaggerating there.
He's not seen me doing it. It's a NASCAR pit stop.
And walk around to the tailgate, set it up there, and go snip, 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 snip. Let me walk back over and plug it back in. I hope I don't have to do that, because the driver's side step went for a decade, without problems. And it's only because I put a motor in and it changed. I didn't catch that I put the wrong the clip in the wrong way, not the clip, the sleeve in the wrong way.
Right.
So that's what you talk about when you're doing prototyping and design, making changes your way. You become the responsible person. There's no use blaming the manufacturer if you're not putting it in the way the manufacturer was. If you've taken a hand in it, it's your job to figure it out. Eventually, I did. I was very fortunate to have a functioning version to figure it out. But that was just one of those little, and I don't get off on religious, but God reaching on my head and going, little humility there, boy. Little humility.
It goes a long way now.
Yes, sir. I got you. Exactly.
I was trying to do it.
Yeah, well.
Okay, that's enough of that.
So anyway, folks, this has been a little bit of a weird wobbling discussion. It's been a lot to get the Jeep ready. We've did all the fluids checks, and we've got antifreeze, and it's good, good condition, and brakes are obviously in great condition from what they were before. Pads are all excellent because I just did them probably a year and a half ago.
Speaking of brakes,
yes,
your other little code.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot that. See, you are good for something.
Wait. Hurtful. I don't know how to take that.
I liked your first reaction.
What, hurtful?
No.
Oh, this?
Yeah. No, you went, yeah. Oh. Therefore, reaction, facial expressions moved quicker than mental thought processes.
Duh.
Yeah, folks. This was another one of those detail items. And maybe this will help you guys. I know of at least two of you out there that are working on TJ chassis and playing with the brakes. So this may help you guys in the long run. One of you I've already talked to. I told you I put a new booster, master cylinder, new proportioning valve, cleaned out all my lines, cleaned out my cylinders, everything reflushed, rebled, burped until it didn't burp anymore, kind of a thing. And that's all great. And then about, yesterday as this recording, so let's say by the time this releases, about a week and a half ago, before I was, going through this, I get a check engine light. Now, this is weird. I get a check engine light. It's a P code 0572. And it's brake switch 1 low. What? Yep. Brake switch. Well, I'm lucky. I got my service manual and I go trucking back in here and I look up brake switch 1. It's nowhere in the factory service manual. I got 2 brake switches. There's one on the pedal and one in the proportioning valve. So I check out the proportioning valve. No, but that would have also turned on the little red brake light that tells you that you got an imbalance in your brake system. It's got to be that one under. Oh gosh, I got to crawl on and get underneath the dash and the
grumble.
That's when I start feeling every year of my 65 years. Trying to get under there.
Hey, at least it's just a simple 2-hour switch.
So
here I am poking the bear.
Yeah, I get under there and I'm looking and it's like, I don't see anything wrong. I got brake lights and I got this. And then finally I look up and I sit up and I'm sitting up away from the Jeep. I literally have my mechanic stool on the floor next to the Jeep, the step turned off, so it's retracted, the door stop off, so it's open, sitting there with my elbows on the door jamb of the bottom with my head under the dash trying to figure out what's going on. And I lean back and I cross my arms and I'm getting ready to have another one of those great
cussing moments.
Yeah, and I notice brake lights reflecting on the wall. What? And I reach over and I grab the pedal and I pull it up with my hand. They're off. And I let go and blink, brake lights on the wall. It didn't do that before. I don't think. Did it?
He didn't even say that in our conversation earlier. That's funny.
Well, you doubt yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Am I going mad?
First thing I did, I get up and the brake lights are staying on. I walk away from the Jeep and I'm like, okay, you just taunting me?
Splashing it with holy water. Gotcha.
Yeah. No, I grabbed a bungee cord and I grabbed the brake pedal and I hooked a bungee cord between the steering wheel and the brake pedal, and the brake lights stayed off.
There you go. Fixed.
Yeah, I guess I could have done that. But no, it's like, okay, this gives me a little bit to go look at.
Yeah.
So armed with P0572 and service manual and why are my brake lights staying on, I was able to ascertain and get to a section on adjusting your brake pedal switch. It turns out that our Jeeps, the 05 and 06 and maybe the 04, were made in the Daimler Chrysler era. And you'll know that if you go check your steering box, and instead of a Saginaw box, you have a short little German box, okay? Some of us have already replaced those because they do have a problem with larger tires, all right? But, you know, in all fairness, this is a joke on my German friends, but, you know, if you really want to make something complicated, let a German engineer do it. Why should we only use one piece? We must use as many pieces as possible, okay? That's an old joke in the engineering school, is that complicated it can be is a German trait. I think there's a beauty of that.
I'm still trying to laugh over the fact that, how can you tell? Well, my steering box is wearing lederhosen.
That too. So that was his joke, not mine.
That's Saginaw box.
Yeah, that's up there in the Michigan. Is it UP? I'm not sure if it's in UP or LP.
I do have to, but let's keep going.
So anyway, folks, you get under there and you look at the brake light switch. Mm-hmm. Now, most sane vehicles have a plunger switch with 2 wires going to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
see
plus
previous
and minus.
statement.
Okay. This has 6 frickin' wires and a bus bar switch. You know, it looks like one of the troll dolls with the hair coming out the top. Okay. I'm going, and then I look in the service manual at it, and sure enough, it's switch 1, switch 2, switch 3 are all in the same body. Okay, so one of those is low. Well, that usually means to ground. What's the circuit? Gee, they switch to ground. That's how come the brake lights can come on even with the key off if you push the brake. It's because permanent power goes to that switch, goes to the light. When the pedal is depressed at any time, it grounds and creates a circuit, and your brake lights come on. Well, apparently one of them is to the ECU, and one of them is to the cruise control, and one of them's to the light. They're all 3 separate. I guess number 1 is the one to the ECU, because that's the one that said, hey, it's low. Low traditionally means grounded, which means it was active. And it was active even when the light switch wasn't active. I'm sitting here going, great, now I have to order a brake light switch. And that's when I stumbled across a very old thread in a Jeep forum in the technical side and said, adjust your light switch before you order a new one. What? I mean, this is probably a 15, 18-year-old post, you know, but right. I'm willing to dig deep to try and find an answer. Well, folks, if you haven't figured it out on a TJ or most Jeeps, they still have adjustable door switches. In other words, if you put your tube doors on or something else and your light doesn't work, you can pull out the plunger hard. It fights you, but it'll come out all the way out, and then you close the door again, and it self-adjusts back to that door. Okay, and it's really neat, except that if you change to a door that needs a longer stroke, and then all of a sudden you have to readjust again. And I expect you can probably do it 15 or 20 times, which is going to more than exceed the life of your Jeep, hopefully. Well, it turns out the brake light switch has the same adjustment. But cool. I didn't, and you could do it in the Jeep, except that I didn't know you could, so I followed the instructions of fighting with the clip, which has, because it's a safety item, the restraint clips that you have to move are not easy to move. They're actually buried, and you have to get in there with a pick. Yeah. And you finally get it out, and then you have to turn the switch 45 degrees to the left or to the right, I'm not sure which it is, for it to loosen up, and then you can pull it back and look at it and go, okay. Then you grab the button. Oh, there's the button. Yeah, it's collapsed. Crap. Pull it, and it goes, brrr, and then you go to put it back in. I can't because the brake's in the way. So then you have to unclip the brake pedal, let it slide back to the back, kind of hold the arm out of the way, push it back into its little square hole, but you have to hold it at a 45-degree tilt. Right. And then you have to go, okay, just seat it and turn it, and it goes click. Oh, get your cable and go, okay, I can't see a bloody thing in here. And, you know, this is when you need a young child that's very flexible that can lay in there to get to it. Problem is they need an old brain that understands what he's doing. My dad tried that with me when I was young. Hence,
Gotcha.
I'm now old.
Fair enough.
And get it clicked in there. Okay, now, and it big warnings. Then holding the brake booster rod, pull the brake pedal up, sliding slowly until the booster rod just drops over the bushing pin of the brake. Mm-hmm. Do not over pull, i.e. don't put yourself back in the same situation you started with.
Right.
And it's really easy to over pull. If you just pull the brake pedal back and then start fitting it, you'll over pull and you'll have the same problem again. So you go up, and as you go up, you suddenly hit that switch and you hear click, 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 thunk. Okay, my switch is in. And then you put that weird little speed clip.
Yeah.
It's the only place I see that speed clip used is on a brake pedal. It's a one-way clip that you can take off for service, but it's a pain to take off and it's a pain to put on, but it does what it's supposed to do. And you re-snap that back on, and then you pull back so that you're against the back of the booster, and you may get one more click. And at that point, hey, no more brake lights unintended.
Sweet.
Start the Jeep. My check engine light went away.
Yay.
I'm going to go erase the code, but
Yeah.
So if you're messing with your brakes to the point that you're changing a booster or you're demounting it or, anything that might adjust the throw of your pedal, and this may apply to other years as well. The good news, your brake light switch is adjustable. The bad news, your brake light switch must be adjusted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's been a rather raucous 2 weeks as I bring the Jeep to the point. As of today, we did a test drive. Scott was my guinea pig in the passenger seat.
Yep.
It was astoundingly quiet.
Air conditioning worked great.
Air conditioning. Yeah, it's amazing when the air stays in the Jeep.
Yeah.
And so, as I said, I'll be up in Pennsylvania either cussing a blue streak or celebrating by now when you hear this show. But this is the kind of things that owning an older Jeep, and it's only going to get worse as it gets older.
Yeah.
Don't cheap out. Quality parts, quality time with your Jeep.
Yeah.
You should be able to deal with it and slowly do things. Realize that everything you do has an effect on something else. So that's just a little tales from the garage. Not all happy, but ultimately successful in the end.
That's all that counts.
So, anything on your side, Scott?
No, I think exception. So far, I'm very happy with the Baxter Performance oil filter adapter. Nothing, to report either way. Can't wait to have them on the show.
Does it start quieter? Does it seem to start quieter?
It does start quieter, but again, I do have 78,000 miles of those dry starts, so it sometimes gets a little chattery. But again, that's because of the worn rod bearings, probably. Who knows?
Yeah.
But that's not the oil filter's fault. But again, I have no problems with it. I'm thoroughly impressed, very happy.
Okay.
Other than that, nothing more to report. We're going to order some parts for the GPW here soon. Going to get the clutch bearing installed, hopefully very soon, for the LJ.
He keeps saying that.
Yeah, I keep saying that. But other than that, things are going rather well.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And how about you guys out there in listener land? We've been getting a few emails from you, tried to help the few of you that ask questions. Again, if you're going to ask me a question, give me some history. Don't just say, hey, my Jeep. I really kind of sort of need to know if it's what year?
Engine, transmission.
What engine, transmission, model kind of thing, depending on your questions. General question. If you're asking me what the best of something is, I'm probably not going to give you a best of, because best for you and best for me are two different animals. If this whole talk hasn't given you the idea that I'm willing to put up with a little bit of extra work to get what I think is a benefit, and if you're one of those, I just want to go buy that and put it on, you're going to have a different answer.
Yeah.
Not saying you're right or you're wrong. You're just going to have a different answer.
Yeah.
So,
but other than that, on the trail podcast at gmail.com or the Facebook Messenger, we'll be happy to hear from you.
Yep. And the only thing I ask is I am traveling a bit right now. And so if I'm a little slow on responses, I'll get to you as quickly as I can. The other fun thing I'll share that as of this recording has nothing to do with Jeeps, but it does have to do with the little analytical process is when you live in a house with a well and you don't seem to be getting water as quickly and as high a pressure as you thought, it's about time to go ask questions before it shuts off.
Yeah.
It was not even cheap. I'm not going to tell you how much it was, but I don't know. Scott, let's see. It'd probably be 4 tires, 4 rims, and a winch.
It's all right, though. A flushing tool, that's a good thing, sir.
Well, and clean water, yeah. We had to have an entire pump string pulled out here at the farm.
Casa de Kevin.
Well, and it too lived a fantastic life. It turns out that the pump was put in 91, and it was hanging on an iron pipe, which is good. Not quite as long as 91 to 2023. So we're talking, 3 decades. And the wiring looks like it had been attacked by, well, I guess since it's in a well in water, nasty piranhas, and patched with some really poor duct tape.
And a stapler.
Great. So ended up replacing the entire string. New pump, new downpipe in Schedule 80 PVC, new power feed system, new motor starter. The good news, when they sounded the well was clean. It had a hard bottom, so I didn't have any sediment buildup. And I have, for those that care and know, I have a good 60 feet of head above my pump of water to the water table. So that was also added in the midst of all these Jeep repairs and sourcing problems and stuff like that. I had to deal with a good friend who owns a well company and was able to squeeze me in. And what we thought was just come out and evaluate was you need a pump and you're going to need it real soon. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, he called back saying, we had a cancellation, and guess what I have in stock?
Come on down.
Come on down.
Let's get this fixed.
Let's get it fixed. So that was another fun joy of living out in the country here. So with that said, take care of you and yours.
Yes.
Do your maintenance. Please, I know we said this in the beginning of the show, but please, I've seen a raft of people trying to use their phones and drive, and I'm sad to say even Jeep people.
Yeah.
Don't do it. It's not worth your life. It's not worth their life. I know it sounds like a chatterbox, but it really is your job to steer that vehicle safely and correctly. Mm-hmm. Please don't drive and play on your phone.
Yeah.
Don't just drive. I guess it's don't drive distracted.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, next show, I hope to bring you an update on the Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival.
Yep.
If you're at or going to the Heritage Festival, this is released on the 15th, so I hope I saw you there.
Yeah.
It's over on, I think, the 10th.
Yeah.
So, no, this is releasing on the 15th. On the 15th.
Yeah.
So I hope I saw you there. So we'll let you know what I saw. Unfortunately, Scott is actually back into the workforce and a gainfully employed.
Minion.
Minion. You're a little more than a minion, but thank you. But I'm going to continue to wander around, and I'll let you know what happened there, as well as the results of did all of my prep work pan out.
You're going to be fine.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Absolutely. So with that, I think it's time to log the hood, put the Jeeps in 4 low, and hit the trails.
I agree.
And also remember to limit pictures, memories, and your trash when you leave said trails, because we want to keep these trails open for our children's children, and our kids.
Yep.
I got it all right. Yay!
You did. I'm impressed. And now you get to drive 2.5 hours back across the state of Florida.
As I go past Mouseland. Yay!
Dodge the ears.
Moving on. So with that...
Hey, it's not Mouseland's fault.
Yes, it is. It needed to be built, maybe their own interstate.
They did.
Moving on.
They did.
I know.
Unfortunately, the world moved in with them.
Oh, look at that. Time to go. With that, guys, we'll see you on the next show, 180 or 189.
189.
All right,
We're
guys.
getting closer to 200.
Yes, we are.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.